Boulevard. We heard people got organized. The petition drive on Kensington for the parking, the mosaic, people getting.
The Lake Drive people also.
Lake Drive, I mean, people get the.
They have unique needs,
Yeah.
Did they? Because there's only, I didn't hear from all the, I don't know that they did. It was because all I saw was like 3 meetings.
I think the Lake Drive people on the whole issue of access from Atwater Beach and what kind of fencing
Right,
and what,
yeah.
there's a couple of.
And the speed.
And the speed on Lake Drive.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are neighborhoods within
There are,
Shorewood. I mean, but that gets to is recognizing neighborhoods like, I mean, we kind of tend to downplay that, because we are only 1.5 miles wide, but I don't know, I'm just worried, is that a good thing or a bad thing? But I think there are neighborhoods, and that's kind of what people are asking for. So I'm also in favor of making it more neighborhoody rather than the whole village.
I wouldn't support that. I feel very strongly that would divide our community even further, that if we're creating a structure, I wouldn't want 2 bids. I wouldn't want a business, we're the size of like Brady Street neighborhood. We're not big, and I was in Milwaukee and I dealt with the bids and the neighborhood association. There's like 40 bids, and there's, I don't know how many neighborhood associations, probably even more. And I get why that's important, but in our village, from what I have seen, separating into quadrants makes it very contentious, and I would never support going forward with multiple neighborhood associations.
Well, you keep making this analogy with bid, and I'm not sure that that's a valid analogy. I mean, the business district is not the same as residents. Businesses are not the same as residents.
I'm done, thank you.
I think we do a good job of the managers update and keep communicating with what the issues and providing avenues for people to comment. That seems to be plenty of avenues for giving us feedback. And people naturally, we're a community that they're friendly and they get together and, they are able to organize their neighbors around issues. I'm sure the folks in Minlo will be able, given the opportunity to, do some volunteer work if that can be arranged on the planters and stuff. So.
Sounds like we have a real diversity.
Who would you sign an MOU with, though, to do that? Because it's not a garden association. You're just a resident who might move. I mean, how do you say, yes, you can use the right of way as a group, but they're not a group?
I mean,
Just
I do think so that this is the TOSA one, so these are all of their smaller groups within this larger, neighborhood association, and even theirs are bigger than probably some of them our whole village. But I do think representing each, little communities or sub-communities' needs, and, I mean, even as you were saying about the very small neighborhoods within Shorewood, I think about even with Halloween and how the small neighborhoods within Shorewood organize and do things together. But wouldn't that be nice if we could have some more global things that all these small neighborhoods, not that they're not important, but let's say Menlo does something, could we celebrate that together as a whole community? I think that it has some potential to bring it together, and not to say that doesn't happen, that the neighborhood, doesn't band together and do things together. They definitely do, but I do think that it has some opportunity for good.
So it sounds like we have a diversity of opinion on this one, depending on how it's designed and what we're doing with it.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any further comments on it at this time?
Well, what's our next step? I mean, I feel like we need to think about it more, maybe look at TOSA and look at some other examples. I mean, I don't really know that much about Milwaukee's neighborhood association, the types of issues they deal with and how they interact with the government, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I just think we need to do more thinking about it, yeah.
Can we do that at committee? Because we had this conversation, and staff came to committee twice when I brought it up about 2 years ago. And I proposed it, they brought it to committee, but they said, what do you want? And I was like, oh my God, I don't know. Should I be like you? At that time I was like, I'm not really sure. So I would love to have it sent to committee, but it was stop sign to help us, there are many forms of neighborhood associations. Some are combined with their bids, some aren't. And you can gain a lot from Milwaukee just by looking at those, but we'll need to discuss that. Maybe you can't just say, what do you want, and draft it up. Again, it's like for the reason you really want to know what you're getting into.
I think that the age-friendly plan would really encourage development of neighborhood groups in smaller areas because of the way that older adults communicate is not often the same as younger people, and so they tend to be excluded in communications. And so when you have these more formal types of ways for people to plug in, it's easier for older adults, so I just am advocating for them.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would love to get more public input on this, actually. I mean, I would love to see, like, if we were to like do a 501c3 for the entire village, but then allow smaller areas to kind of go within that, like, what, I don't even really know would it be in blocks, would it be,
Right.
would it be like a Woodburn, north of Olive? I mean, I don't even know how people would arrange themselves. I mean, certainly Menlo, we know would arrange themselves, I think Lake Drive people have kind of unique interests with having beach property.
So in my mind, I had somewhat thought about that a little bit. If we did sort of divide it up somewhat similar to the way Tyler had divided up the village amongst those like 7, I think it's 7, right, from the survey.
Yeah.
8 counting capital development.
Oh, okay, so, I mean, 7 or 8, and, and then sort of those, I mean, it's pretty small, that those little areas have similar interests and concerns. That was just, that doesn't mean that that's what it has to be, but just, that was just my initial kind of thought.
So any kind of bottom line.
How do they talk to each other? I guess the reason I had proposed it originally was it's a forum like the businesses, and I just compare it just because of the forum nature of discussion. It's a forum for those little neighborhoods to share with another neighborhood ideas and perspectives, rather than just coming to the village board and doing it. It's a pretty, it's another way to have interaction among our neighbors. If we continue down the path of those will have their own, and and I get why people would like that. There's benefits to that, but I don't think that the value that I was striving for when I introduced it earlier is I think it's lost. Which is, there's no issue. It would have been great to have the neighbors, each one, there's board members that are from every neighborhood or every quadrant at least, and in that, talk about it, and then give an opinion. Like, we weren't in this specific committee. It doesn't mean you have to all be in agreement, but it does provide another avenue of discussion, and I think that is what Shorewood can do.
But I think what neighbors, for example, the neighbors around Menlo, is they feel they have a particular interest that someone on Newton or on Wildwood doesn't have, and that they have an asset that they feel they have an interest in. So I don't think their interest is so much in talking to other neighborhoods. Their interest is being organized to protect, basically, and beautify or whatever their particular assets. So, I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
So
what I'm saying, businesses do too. It's like, oh, I don't have those planters on rental, so they talk about it, and then the people are also like, wow, that might be a good idea. Let's keep the village, and then the neighborhood association can still contract with the village for Menlo. It doesn't have to represent the whole neighborhood on everything. They don't usually, like, businesses and neighbors don't disagree if they don't have an interest in it. They listen and they support. So I think it's just a better understanding of what a neighborhood association is. It's not saying everyone has to come to one consensus. It's just an organized body of ideas.
Tyler?
Rebecca,
there's other perennials around our village.
do you think it'd be worth, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of who the proper staff person is, because at first I'm thinking Bart, but we know Bart has so much on his plate. So I think that's another thing that hasn't been discussed is, from a staff perspective, because there's a lot of questions, good questions are being asked that staff is gonna have to investigate. So is this one that maybe we can just spend some time, staff, talking about how we would even proceed?
So when I was conversing with trustee Carpenter on it, that was one of the things that I brought to her attention. Because right now, for some of the larger things that we have going on, this
Yeah.
didn't rise to the top operationally for
Yeah.
us. In terms of what agenda, you know, there's some larger movers next year
Yeah.
that require that time.
'Cause that,
Investigating it is one thing, but we are not prepared from a staffing perspective to administer this process.
Yeah.
Nor do I feel comfortable going forward with that in light of the fact that we have not clearly gone through and finished our 3 things on appointments, standing committees, and evaluating our committees. So, that's one of the reasons why, you know, in discussing the senior resource center and the age-friendly plan, and Elizabeth and the conduit of the city of Wauwatosa and how that went. I just say, exploring is one thing, but the time commitment, for full execution, I don't know. One of the things, that I had suggested during that conversation is perhaps, you know, if trustee Carpenter wanted to reach out to the Wauwatosa Association, it's a separate entity from the city. And I, you know, I'm not forever shooting it down, I'm just saying, like, at this point in time, I'm, without having a better understanding of scope and how we can do it here, I see that there's benefit for our community. You know, I'm just wondering what the right ingredients and the timing is for that.
So is the next step then to get more information? I'm just trying to figure out how we move this forward, move the ball forward here. Is the next step that there seems to be some general support for this, but it feels like we need a little bit more information in order to push the ball forward.
Just one comment, the age-friendly plan in a way did address this in their neighborhood connections. It didn't rise to the level of the neighborhood associations because it didn't seem feasible with the staff and cost and time. So they, are trying to build these connections through the Human Relations Committee, Shorewood Moving Forward, and, the Shorewood Community Network. So those 3 entities are meeting and trying to figure out ways. Now, it is sort of more, it's not political, it's just neighbor connections. It's not in specific areas. It's starting as this little kernel of something, and they're trying to see where it's gonna go. So there is some movement on this. The neighborhood association sort of takes it to the next step.
Thank you.
But also, I mean, would the village be initiating this? I mean, wouldn't it be the neighbors in a certain area saying we want our own association, and them organizing and creating some kind of legal status so that you could have an MOU or whatever? I mean, if the people on Menlo wanna have their perennials back, then they need to you know, meet with Leanne and figure out, like, she needs to be able to have some kind of agreement with them about what, when, how, or whatever, you know.
Done.
Already done, oh, you've already met with them and organized that, okay, great, well, they don't need a neighborhood.
They don't need it. I'm just looking at Cambridge Woods, they've got like, rummage, a move out, they notify the move out for UWM, so they're notified. There's a rummage sale, they organize a neighborhood rummage sale in June. They do a cleanup in July, and they get a city dumpster set up in middle of the neighborhood. They do a potluck, and they just notify people of East Garden, and they have an ice cream social in September. So they're just like, it's like.
The forms, presentations, I just wanna tell you about the statute, because those are forms from the ground-based stuff, and so, yeah, I get what Milwaukee does, but then like this, sometimes the statute says the village is the body that actually enacts and makes one. You can have a village-sponsored neighborhood association meeting, we want to enact one, you go to the public, you find one resident, that's what they did with the bid, that's how our bid came about. But I'm just saying, or you can do it this way, which is what Trustee Maher is explaining, and I like both of them. I'm just saying, the one that was being proposed, per statute, is the more village, if we found benefit in it, it would be more of the villages initiating it, going to the neighbors, talking to them, it would be an initiative.
At this point, with all the other initiatives that we have on our plate, and staff we're already turning away, like historic preservation would be delayed possibly. This would be way out, I would think.
But we are deciding on the just to be clear, we aren't deciding on yay or nay
Correct.
tonight.
No, but I'm just saying, if you're kind of looking at them, this would not rise in my list.
I mean, I'm fine if neighbors wanna get together
Oh,
and form their own,
absolutely.
I totally support that, I'm not sure that we
Encourage
need to
people.
encourage that. Okay,
Anything else on neighborhood associations? Hearing none, the next two are mine, and I think we can get through them relatively quickly. The first is the post office mail drop in the middle of Bartlett. I'd heard about.
Yes,
Yeah.
it came up.
I'd heard about that when I was campaigning, and several residents have brought it to my attention. I didn't realize that it had such a long tail on it. But evidently, when I started over at HAD, I just wanted to raise it to this group's attention, because there is still interest in it. There was kind of a proposed plan of building it, and then talking to Leanne, I understand that it's a little bit more complicated than the proposed plan.
Can you give a little background? I don't know any.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I heard from various people during the campaign that, and you know, I agree that if you had across on Bartlett to the east of the post office, in the middle of the street, it would be nice to have a mail drop, so you could just drive by and drop mail.
Yeah.
And I agree, that would be a great convenience for the residents. And there were designs put forward that would be able to do it cheaply theoretically, but then talking with Leanne about the pavers and, you know, having to withstand kind of that street being plowed, I understood that it's a little more complicated, so at the end of the day, I wanted to raise it to this body's attention, but knowing now that it's a little bit more complex and costly than I had initially anticipated. But I did hear resident suggestions, and I think it's a great idea. I mean, but again, you have to weigh that against the cost of it and the manpower that we put towards it. So I again think it's a great idea in theory, but we haven't gone down that path, and I think it's been gone down in the past. So
I mean, I think, you